Good morning, dear students. I have come up with some material that may help you in drawing your relationships diagram for the upcoming exam, internal exam. Emma Woodhouse is the central character of the novel Emma. She has a sister, Isabella Knightley, married to John Knightley, whose brother is George Knightley, a very important character in the novel. You can also count him as a protagonist. He is a family friend, counselor, well-wisher of the Woodhouse family, and then a frequent visitor, and then he's seen in constant conversations with Emma Woodhouse's father, that is Mr. Woodhouse, and he's constantly correcting Emma Woodhouse, telling her, asking her to avoid, getting into people's, meddling with people's lives. Uh, Now, Emma Woodhouse has a friend, Harriet Smith, who resides in boarding school. Her parentage is not known. She's an orphan. And then this school is managed by Miss Goddard, and a minor character, you can say. And then as the book opens, Harriet Smith is found telling Emma Woodhouse how there is a proposal from a farmer, from a rich farmer, Robert Martin, and she also confesses or confides into Emma Woodhouse that she too has feelings for Robert Martin. But then, for Emma Woodhouse, Harriet Smith is her favorite matchmaking project, and she wants Harriet Smith not to marry a farmer but a rich person. So she selects Elton, the vicar, the handsome vicar of Highbury Town, for Harriet Smith, and she tries to set up Elton for Harriet Smith. But then, very soon, everything collapses as Elton leaves in a huff. He has no such feelings for Harriet Smith. In fact, he feels insulted that Emma Woodhouse can uh, think of such a lowly match for himself, uh, whereas while he himself has feelings for Emma Woodhouse, he in fact proposes to Emma Woodhouse. That's when she reveals her true intention in setting up Elton and Harriet together. But Elton feels mighty insulted and leaves Highbury Town, where all these characters reside, to Bath, a nearby town, only to marry a rich woman who later becomes Mrs. Elton. Another important character is Emma Woodhouse's governess, Miss Taylor. And then, as the book opens, we find Emma Woodhouse totally rejoicing in the successful matchmaking that she takes pride in, that of matching her governess with Mr. Weston, a widower. Mr. Weston has a former wife, Miss Churchill, and then has a son with his former wife, who is Mr. Frank Churchill, yet another important character in the novel. So, for your information, as a kind of reinforcement, Mr. Frank Churchill is Emma's governess, Mrs. Weston's stepson. Okay, then now we catch up with the main story thread line. We see that Elton, being rejected by Emma, leaves Highbury only to get married to a rich lady, Mrs. Elton. And when he comes back to Bath, he takes no, I mean, he doesn't miss even one occasion to insult and degrade Harriet Smith. That's when Harriet Smith, when supported by George Knightley, who is a kind soul, comes to rescue of Harriet Smith when she is repeatedly insulted by Elton and his wife. That's when George Knightley comes to her rescue at these social do's. But Harriet Smith mistakes or misunderstands George Knightley's affection for her to be love, and then begins to have feelings for George Knightley. And then, meanwhile, there is an entry of two very important characters in Highbury, Mr. Frankfurt, Mr. Frank Churchill, Mr. Weston's stepson, and then Jane Fairfax, who is niece of Miss Barnes. Miss Barnes is a poor widow, not a widow, poor spinster who happens to be Emma Woodhouse's neighbor. Okay, Emma Woodhouse, because Miss Bates is not a very rich person, a very plain looking person at that, okay, does not have much of respect. And then probably the novelist has the character of Miss Bates only to show the negative side of Emma Woodhouse, how status conscious she is. Anyways, coming back to the story, Miss Bates's uh, niece, Jane Fairfax, enters Highbury only to make Emma feel slightly uneasy because she is as beautiful as Emma, but then she is not blessed with a fortune as Emma is. Emma is rich, and then Emma is rich and beautiful, while Jane too is beautiful, but then kind of reserved. And then Jane also, because of her poor wealth, poor economic status, is in a situation where she has to quickly, move, take up a job as a governess. But then Jane Fairfax creates quite a flutter and in Highbury, as she is stunning, beautiful, and reserved. The whole town is talking about her beauty, while Frank Churchill is kind of focusing all his attention on Emma Woodhouse, and then Emma Woodhouse too enjoys that attention, though Emma Woodhouse decides right from the beginning never to marry, because marriage, she feels, is not her cup of tea. But then she thinks she has this misplaced confidence about her matchmaking skills. Though she doesn't want to get married, she thinks she's an ace matchmaker, and then she gets this confidence from being from successfully matchmaking her governess, Miss Taylor, with Mr. Weston. But then from there on, after that successful matchmaking, she lands in a series of matchmaking or romantic misadventures. Note this word, misadventures. All that she tries to set up are go flop. Okay, they are like failed love affairs or failed matchmaking attempts. Okay, coming back to the story, now Frank Churchill flirts with Emma, and Emma too, though she doesn't want to marry anyone, still enjoys that attention from Frank Churchill. And then it's the talk of the town that Frank Churchill and Emma Woodhouse are a pair. Okay, but then Frank Churchill, in the background, is already engaged to Jane Fairfax. Okay, is already engaged to Jane Fairfax, and then the only reason why his lavishing Emma Woodhouse with all his attention is to cover up his secret engagement with Jane Fairfax, which, but then the whole town is thinking that Frank Churchill and Emma are a pair. Meanwhile, meanwhile, Emma Woodhouse slowly is getting disillusioned with Frank, and then This process is quickened when Harriet Smith comes to Emma Woodhouse and tells her now Emma Woodhouse should be happy because she has finally found for herself someone with rich background, someone with a rich background, and immediately Emma Woodhouse thinks that it is Frank. Because much to her delight, she thinks that it is Frank Churchill, and she is happy that Harriet and her protege, that is her object of her project of matchmaking, is has finally found a suitable suitor, because for her, what defines a suitable husband is someone who has to be wealthy and of good social position. So she is happy that Harriet Smith thinks of Frank Churchill. But wait till Emma is totally, disappointed, or rather goes into depression, because when Harriet Smith names George Knightley and not Frank Churchill, because that's when Emma Woodhouse discovers that she has intense feelings for George Knightley, because George Knightley also, had given his peace of mind to Emma very recently about her ill attitude towards Miss Bates. He corrects her, and maybe Emma, for the first time, finds a gentleman who is not below her, but who is her equal in intelligence, and then who feels superior, who takes it upon himself to correct her. So maybe she falls for this trait of George Knightley, and when Harriet Smith names George Knightley, she kind of gets nervous. She begins to discover her feelings for George Knightley. Just then, Frank Churchill, um, who is away from Highbury for a while, returns to Highbury after the death of his Aunt Churchill. Aunt Churchill was the one who had taken care of Frank Churchill. In fact, Frank Churchill grew under her uh, uh, guardianship, and then she was her guardian, his guardian, sorry, she was his guardian. And then but then he could not marry Jane Fairfax then while she was alive, because she was hyper status conscious, and there was no way he could convince her. So he waits for Churchill to get married, and then Churchill to pass away, so that Miss Churchill, his aunt, to pass away, so that he can come back to. Meanwhile, he was flirting all the while, only to only for people to think that he's, like that was a cover. His attention towards Emma Woodhouse was only a cover to hide his secret engagement with Jane Fairfax. Now that his aunt dies, he comes back and declares his love for Jane Fairfax, and declares and also announces that he is already engaged to Jane Fairfax. This creates a huge uproar in the town of Highbury, in the small, close knit conservative town of Highbury, and this totally is a shocker to Emma Woodhouse. Now that she discovers her feelings for George Knightley, she also feels kind of uh, s- spited by Frank Churchill, because he never ever had any love for her, and he was merely flirting with her. And while she discovers genuine feelings of love for George Knightley, all this going on, now that the whole scandal is about Frank Churchill's engagement with Jane Fairfax. who is not so wealthy. Okay, the whole town is talking about it, and Emma Woodhouse also finds herself discussing the same with George Knightley, and much to her surprise, she is totally taken aback and then thrilled to bits. Is totally ecstatic and on cloud nine when George Knightley actually tells her that he has no feelings for Harriet Smith, and all his love is for Emma Woodhouse. But then immediately Emma Woodhouse also feels kind of unsettled, not knowing how to reveal about her engagement, her love of about their love affair. That is their love, her love affair with George Knightley, because now she knows that Harriet Smith too has feelings for George Knightley. But that is solved when Harriet Smith comes back to Emma Woodhouse, telling her that she has discovered that she has no feelings for George Knightley, and that she once again accepted her real time true love for Elton, and she has accepted his proposal, okay, second time proposal. And then so the whole novel ends with three happy marriages, that of Emma Woodhouse with George Knightley, Harriet Smith's marriage to rich farmer Mr. Robert Martin, and then Jane Fairfax's marriage with um Frank Churchill.